earth rolled onwards into night, the people of that world did sleep and shiver, somehow knowing the dawn would bring only one thing.
Hello everyone and welcome back to Doctor Who's Crown Jewels. This is the penultimate Russell T Davies episode, although there's going to be a lot more in between now and then, or the final episode of the series. So, the specials. I've decided to cover the specials on their own because there's enough of them, and I don't tend to group specials with a season. However, this cluster of specials is usually grouped together either called the Series 4 specials, the 2009 specials, or on the Steelbook release, simply just the specials. To clarify, the selection this time round is all the episodes that aired concurrently between The Next Doctor and The End of Time Part 2. Although if I was discussing The End of Time, it would be all in a one. I am not talking about Dreamland or The Wedding River Song. The latter is an episode of a different show, and Dreamland isn't part of the main episode list. Although I must clarify, Dreamland's a bit dull, and I might as well mention the Infinite Quest here as well, just to cover my bases. I enjoy it, but we're moving on. Yeah, the preamble's going to be shorter from this point on, because let's be real, Next Doctor, I think it is overhated.
That was designated a lie.
I do genuinely enjoy it, but the previous Christmas specials were stronger. It's not the weakest one of the RTD era, though. Planet of the Dead.
Hello, Peter Geronimo.
And again, 7-6, not 6-7.
I enjoy Malcolm. Think the Doctor's alright. It's not my cup of tea, but who knows, I might change my mind on it. I don't know, but it's Gareth Roberts, so it's hard to really enjoy his stuff. And The End of Time is, Dinner time! So part 1 is just really not my cup of tea, and part 2 is a mess where there is bits I really enjoy, and bits I just really don't. Wars of Mars is one of those stories in the fandom that I feel like has this weird sort of category of quality. I think everyone agrees that it is good. It's just a matter of how good. I feel like you can categorise a Doctor Who fan in two ways, and there's many ways to split Doctor Who fans apart, trust me. But you've either got people who say this is in their top 5 Tennant stories, or not even scratching the top 10 Tennant stories. That being said, Tennant stories are really good, so it is a case of I can't really blame anyone for liking 10 other stories, depending on the stories, but yeah. I'm in the former camp. And when I say top 5, I mean like top 2. I'm still trying to process how I feel about this compared to Midnight, because both of them I would say are in my top 10 Doctor Who stories of all time. Yes, I'm going this far. I think how much you like this really depends on the mileage of how you feel about the Doctor not having a companion. That said, I feel like everyone can agree on Heaven Sent for some reason.
I'm nothing without an audience.
Meanwhile, with this, some people are like, oh, I enjoy it. Even though I would say this is much better than Heaven Sent. But I really do think it's... I mean, obviously it's down to personal taste. I'll get to discussion about Heaven Sent itself at a later date, because obviously I will. But I'll explain what I like about The Wars of Mars. Well, mainly it is just a base under siege, really. And that's a category for success in Doctor Who's book. It's hard to mess it up. But the fact that this isn't just a base under siege, but it explores interesting concepts and actually makes the characters extremely likeable from the get-go. This is not just a base under siege, this is a really good one. However, Doctor Who does have a lot of those. It has Tomb of the Cybermen, Robots of Death, Impossible Planet. What makes this different from those? Two things. And these two things I genuinely think... I mean, they're the things that obviously set it apart. Like, if you've seen this one, which I hope you have, it's really good. If you've seen this one, you know what two things they are. They are the threat and the meta-contextual setting. Both stemming from the fact that the story idea literally just happened from the fact that recently, as of time of writing that episode, it was discovered that there had been water on Mars, and still maybe there today. I mean, there's ice caps, so it's solid water, but liquid water as well. So naturally, make that the villain. But it's done in an interesting way, because it's like zombies.
Resident Evil.
So we've had zombies before, in the RTD era itself. However, these zombies weren't exactly mindless. They were beasts. They clearly did not have any conscious thought. Well, I can't say any, but it's hard to explain. Like, they don't have. They are very bestial, and the only conscious thought they seem to have is strategy. And the idea of water's always patient, and it always wins in the end because it erodes the cliff faces over time, and it's inevitable. It's honestly a genius characterization for these zombies to have. Also, their design is possibly one of the creepiest monster designs in Doctor Who. It was very difficult to pull off, and in concept, it's definitely the scariest Doctor Who monster visually. In execution, you could argue differently. I definitely think they have a freaky aesthetic to them, because we always have this sense of what looks wrong, what looks ill, what looks sick. And the water in the waters of Mars, or rather the flood, as they've tended to be called, it is creepy, and they are utilised very well in the horror department. However, this story, despite being a horror in its first half, or rather in the first two acts, it isn't really hinging on that fear, but it is there. They are meant to scare, and they are meant to freak you out, but they are mainly just a threat. That's what point 2 is all about. Point 2 is the Doctor's role within the story. And the fact that it's been discussed over the past 20 years, could we go to Mars? I've been hearing about it for a while, mostly over the past 10, although I think ruminations about it were being had around the time. Still, it's this fascination. Exploring the stars has always been really something that, ever since the space race, we've been thinking maybe we should, maybe even since before that, we've been thinking, could we touch these alien sands, really? And that sense of exploration has romantically been seen throughout Doctor Who, and Mars is always going to be the first step in terms of actually settlement. The moon is the first step in terms of actually going to another celestial body. But you're never gonna have a moon colony. Or rather, if you are, there's gonna be a lot of scientific development before you can even turn something like the moon into a colony. Mars has been very much a question mark. People have been thinking, Mars seems not too far out, but could it support life? And that has always been a question. Like, is there life on Mars? Can there be life on Mars? Was there life on Mars? All of these questions have basically been asked since questions about living on other planets has been. And naturally, is there life on Mars has been answered by Doctor Who before in the Ice Warriors, but it's a case of, can life be supported now? Because the Ice Warriors are very much a separate concept, but in the waters of Mars, it's very much meant to be, this is the first colony. And they're like saying, 50 years in the future. I would say that's reasonable. Although now it's about 35, so clock's ticking, guys. But, yeah, the first Martian colony. But because it's the first, and it seems like an inevitability, it seemed like a perfect opportunity to be like, this thing that would be a historic moment in the history of the human race is natural to be, like, not even this hypothetical thing, because Doctor Who's dealt with historical events in the future before, but never treated it like a historical before, until something that actually seems tangible, like the first Martian colony, which is right there. And credit to the Waters of Mars for honestly keeping that romantic sense of space exploration throughout, whilst the Doctor talks about, like, to Adelaide, you inspire people, you inspire your granddaughter, and your granddaughter leads a space exploration revolution. And that is beautiful. But the only way that can happen is if history follows its course. But that involves the entire base dying. In something that history doesn't know, it's unrecorded. But what is recorded is that they died, and it was a tragedy. And well, we found out that it was because of the flood, but people didn't know. So, what happened? Well, the Doctor kept going, I don't want to be here, I have to go, I can't be here. Not even I don't want to, I can't be here, because, you know, the responsibility of time travel, but something's egging him on to be like, investigate, save. And that's just something that's a thing in the Doctor's mindset, because the Doctor saves people, and sometimes has a bit of a disregard for history, but in fixed events like that, can't really do that, which we've seen explored in stuff like the fires of Pompeii. But here, it's the same sort of situation, yet no one's able to stop him, and that's an interesting characterization about the 10th Doctor. He's worked through his trauma now, because that's what the 9th Doctor was all about. It's still with him. So he needs friends to calm him down to stop the rage from simmering up again. The specials don't really do that. He doesn't have any, like, best friend at all. There's no companion there to stop him. And yes, there's companion surrogates, but the thing is about a companion is that they're the Doctor's best friend. These people have just met the man. Or in the case of Wilf, he knows the man, and at least he's an old friend for the Doctor to at least talk to throughout. All of this character arc stuff and all of this aspect about the 10th Doctor's character are beautifully handled here, because in a way, turn left was a warning that the Doctor will not stop in his path. He can be very just focused on something and will see it through to the end. And that is his fatal flaw in this story. Not fatal to him, but fatal to Adelaide, because she kills herself in the end to preserve time, because he saves whoever's left. And honestly, all of this does not only create a very interesting Doctor Who story, but serves as the perfect, I guess, if you're wanting to, like, I think most people tend to pick out the best or most interesting parts of a character's characterization when talking about, like, these chapters of their characterization. The End of Time doesn't really do that with the 10th Doctor. It doesn't really tackle his character at all. It mostly just tackles the overall vibes of the era ending. I don't really sense that the 10th Doctor grows throughout his final adventure like I have with other incarnations of the Doctor. So I wouldn't say this is like a perfect coda or ending for the characters. This is the perfect epilogue, because realistically, it feels like Journey's End was the end of his journey. Everything after this is an epilogue. This is the defining moment at the end of his life, in my opinion. Do I think the ending was ruined by expanded media later on? I think it would have been better if the expanded media wasn't there, but I wouldn't exactly say it was ruined. I do definitely feel like you can interpret the final moment of the Doctor in the TARDIS in different ways. Like him charging to his eventual destiny or charging to a tirade. Either way works, regardless of if you want to consider Time Lord Victoria's canon. I think the performances, and I don't think the music is particularly strong. It does... I feel like this one's definitely better to view in a somber tone, but there are more lighter parts, and there should be. But I feel like the lighter parts are brought up a little too much for my personal taste through the music, but honestly, who cares? I mean, that's more than made up for by the track Time Lord Victorious, which is honestly haunting and painful, and it really sells this somber tone. But yeah, largely it ticks all the boxes for a base under siege, which, you know, makes a good Doctor Who story. Not just any base under siege, a good one, and deals with really interesting themes that sets it apart from any other. I would argue this is probably my favourite base under siege story. In terms of traditional base under sieges, this does it the best because not only does it do it perfectly, but it does some less traditional things with it, mainly as a sort of topping, let's say. But what do you feel about the Waters of Mars? Do you prefer any of the other specials? I know some people would prefer the End of Time, and I've not mentioned it in the best light. I get it for part 2, but honestly, it really depends on how you feel about stories overall. Do you think I've missed anything? Drop your own discussion points in the comments below, and I'll see you next time. Cheerio!